Hi, I'm Reagan.
And I'm Bailey, and you're listening to
Graveyard Gossip.
Reagan, what have you been up to?
Not much. Work has been a shit show. But
How's it been being a wife? You're a
the
newlywed
same.
still.
Everybody keeps asking me that. It's the same.
It's the same.
I've been with this dude for 5 years.
Yeah.
How's that? Soon to be married life.
I'm ready to get there. This wedding, stressful. Don't you say it. Bring that mad at me because I kept saying it. I'm gonna have a traditional wedding, Reagan. I'm not going to elope, even though it's what my tiny little girl heart would love. I'm going to have a real wedding with the man that I love. But no, it's been good. What are we talking about today? Because that's a lot of notes you have over there.
Yeah, so this is like 4.5 pages of notes, but I think I can get through it pretty quickly.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Who knows?
It's 10 o'clock, but okay.
It is 10 o'clock. It's okay.
Like, really?
Yeah, it's 10:03.
Oh, shit, I was bullshitting. Okay,
And
15
you were
minutes
right.
blew by.
So I'm going to touch on Charles Manson, Sharon Tate, the murders that happened at the house. I'm going to talk about the house itself. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about a little bit of spooky shit.
Oh.
And then we'll have a story from my sister,
Kirsten,
and some of her words about Charles Manson.
Oh, that spooky little girl.
Yeah, I'm super excited for you to hear it because it ties in perfectly, and it ties in the creepiest way possible. Yeah, so I'll read that at the end. Okay. In Los Angeles, California, stood a house on 10050 Cielo Drive. So, not Cielo Green.
Okay, thanks. I needed to verify. Appreciate you for reading my mind.
So think beautiful ranch-style farmhouse, big French doors, giant windows, and it was really a place where like you went to kind of get away from the city, and like you got up there. It was a very, very quiet little neighborhood. A lot of Hollywood stars like lived around the area. But it was a big ass fucking house.
Yeah.
So it was 3,200 square feet.
Holy shit.
With an in-ground pool. It had a little like wishing well outside of it too.
That's adorable.
Yeah, it was so cute. Like it was perfect. And then the guest house in the back was 2,000 square foot and had a garage. Like I said, like the neighborhood was very like Hollywood star friendly. So multiple Hollywood stars owned and or rented this house from the time it was built in 1941 to when it was demolished in 1994. One of the celebrities was Roman Polanski. He was a French and Polish producer who was married to famous actress Sharon Tate. So I'm going to touch more on Tate, which was one of Charles Manson's victims. I'm going to touch a little bit more on her versus the other victims. I'll go into them a little bit, but Tate was born on January 24th, 1943 in Dallas, Texas, to Paul and Doris Tate. So Paul, her dad, was active duty military, or army, excuse me. So they moved around a bunch during her childhood. Her childhood was described as like a beautiful home life, perfect family, supportive parents. Like it was a great, just like they were living the American dream.
Yeah.
Military style, you know? She was super close with her 3 younger siblings. She was the oldest. And she was described as like a very kind and absolutely beautiful. She was adored by so many, and she had a love for film, music, fashion, like think like girly girl. So with these passions, she began her modeling and pageant career, and since she moved around a bunch, she was presented with like even more opportunities to be able to follow those dreams. So when her family was stationed overseas, she was noticed by Richard Beymer, an American actor and filmmaker, Richard and Sharon dated a while while the film Hemingway's Adventures of a Young Man was being produced. I think he was an extra. Like, I don't even think
not even so important.
I don't think so.
Damn.
But still, like, with this new relationship, it's still an actor.
Yeah.
It opened up a wave of opportunities for her. Like, Richard had connections. So she flourished while being overseas and even tried to come back to the US for a little bit. And she was like, no, like, I think I'm going to finish my studies, whatever. But that career kept calling back to her. It was actually said that her mom had some sort of, like, mental breakdown with her, like, being back in the US.
Damn.
I don't know how accurate that is. But now that I'm telling the story, I kind of remember it. But anyway, she returned back to Italy because that's where they were stationed. So she was there for a little while until her father was stationed back to the U.S. So she was like, there, left, there, back. You know. Anyways.
That's a long flight.
Yeah, the bitch is like 16 hours. Yeah, I used to do that shit all the time when I was little. Okay. Anyways. Yeah. She was there for a while until her father was stationed back to the U.S. And then when they got stationed there, she was like, okay, like, I want to pursue my career. She's still with Richard. And again, connections. So they moved to LA together. Through his connections, she met Jay Sebring. He was a former sailor turned, like, Hollywood hairstylist.
Oh.
Yeah, so everybody went to him. I don't know if he did women's hair or if he was just a barber, but I do know that he did a lot of stars. Her and Jay, because I guess her and Richard split at some point. Don't know when that happened. Could have dug a little deeper. Didn't. But her and Jay started dating. And he actually proposed. That's how serious they were.
Wow.
But she declined. Yeah. He was actually really pissed off at first, but we'll get to that part. But she was like, yeah, like, I love you, like, you're great, but, like, I really want to focus on my career right now. Understandable.
In the 70s. Love to hear it.
They remained really great friends. Like, obviously he was upset about her leaving him and whatnot, but they still stayed really good friends. And since he was also famous, more connections, she met Deborah Kerr. She was a British actress who kind of became, like, this mentor for Sharon. Deborah was working on a film in London and invited Sharon to come with her. So Sharon goes and follows Deborah around during production, which brought them to France. So while in France, she met another French and Polish producer, Roman Polanski. With this new relationship, more possibilities, more connections. She starred in multiple movies. Valley of the Dolls, Eye of the Devil, The Wrecking Crew, and then her last movie, 12 Plus 1. I think that's how you say it. It's literally 12 plus 1. So I would assume.
Yeah.
13. Anyways, so Roman and Sharon. Sorry.
My wine was left in Reagan's freezer, so it's frozen. So it's been slowly melting throughout the time we've been trying to record this video. Please ignore the noises.
You think if we put it back there? Oh, I meant, like, behind your pillow, so was it uncomfortable?
It's a little cold, but it's okay. Body heat.
So Roman and Sharon started a romantic relationship and even got married while they were in London. So I guess he proposed and she wanted.
She was like, okay, I'll take this one.
So sorry, Jay. Speaking of Jay, he was pissed. Did not like Roman at all.
Dang.
But then eventually, like, he met him and he was like, okay, you're kind of cool. And they became, like, a big friend group.
Threesome. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Understood.
So Roman and Sharon became, like, the it couple. They were at large.
They were
a part of a large social group, which included multiple Hollywood stars. Terry Melcher being one of them, and he actually lived in that house that Roman and Sharon moved into. I think a year or two before they moved in, something like that. He was a music producer who worked with the Byrds, Paul Revere and the Raiders, the Mamas and Papas, and even the Beach Boys.
Wow.
So this is kind of when Charles Manson comes into play. One member of the Beach Boys was well acquainted with Charles Manson. His name was Dennis Wilson. He'd actually wrote a couple songs with Manson. He even visited Spawn Ranch, where the cult was located. And Dennis actually really liked the vibe, for some reason, of Charles, and introduced him to Terry Melcher, the music producer, because Charles Manson was also a musician. The other Beach Boys, weirded out by Charles.
For sure.
Makes sense.
100%. You seen the guy? Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, most of his followers are women, and he was able to charm them so much.
But he was so ugly.
But he was so ugly. So Terry, the music producer, listened to Manson's work and allegedly made like several promises to him about making his own record. But Terry never fulfilled those promises.
Did not follow through.
So Manson was obviously like betrayed and upset and whatever. One night on August 8th, 1969, Manson made the decision to send 4 of his followers, Tex Watson, Susan Adkins, Patricia Krenwickel, and then Linda Casabian. I don't really care if I mispronounce their names. They're all piece of shit humans that all deserve what came to them. He sent them all to the house at Cielo Drive and ordered them to kill everyone that they found in the house. So even though Terry no longer lived there, it's believed that he sent his followers to send a message to Terry, which is really fucked up because, well, obviously in general. But I'm like, if you know where Terry lives now, not saying Terry should have died, but you get what I'm saying? Like,
should have been Terry in the punishment, not the people living in the house.
Yeah.
No idea what the fuck's going on.
There's a lot of like different theories behind it because there's so many different stories that he gave and like so many different like motives and stuff like that. Like it's weird, but that's the one that I found that I felt in my brain matched the most.
Yeah.
So 26-year-old Sharon was 8 months pregnant when she invited her friend Abigail Folger, who was the heiress of Folger's Coffee, her boyfriend, I think it's Wojciech Frykowski, and her ex-boyfriend, Jay Sebring, over to the house because her husband, Roman, was working in Europe at the time on a film, and she didn't want to be alone. So she invited all these friends over to keep her company. Okay, so this is the part where it's going to get a little graphic. I didn't put all the details in there just because this isn't the story that I'm doing today, and also it's tragic. Like, people lost their lives in the most gruesome way ever. So yeah, trigger warning. So when Manson's members arrived to the house, Tex Watson climbed up the telephone pole, cutting the phone lines, and they drove their car back down the hill. So they drove, because it's a long ass drive. So they drove up the hill, cut the phone wires, and then actually drove the car back down in order to like not draw much attention, and then climbed up the side of the hill like the animals that they are. Anyways, so when they were walking back up, they saw 18-year-old Stephen Parent leaving the property in his white AMC Rambler. Tex approached Stephen, stopping the car. Tex pulled out a .22 caliber revolver, pointing it at Stephen, while also holding a knife in the other hand. And Tex lunged at Stephen with the knife, first slicing his hand open. The wound on his hand was a defensive wound because if somebody's coming at you with a knife, your first instinct is put your hand up.
Yeah.
But he cut so deep, it actually cut the watch that he was wearing off of his wrist. And then proceeded to shoot him 4 times in the chest and the abdomen. So Stephen was actually visiting somebody that was staying in the guest house. And just decided to leave for the night and just...
And he was 18?
He was 18. He was a baby. He was a baby. Really should have, and I really want to dig a little bit more into his life and who he was as a person, just because he really was like one of those instances, like wrong place, wrong time. I mean, obviously all of these murders are, but like
literally
him for sure.
He
like
was associated.
Yeah, no. After they murdered Stephen. They fled the scene up the rest of the drive and cut the screen out of one of the windows. But what doesn't make sense to me is that one of the windows was open. Like, they were just painting the nursery and had left the windows open to, like, air it out. But still, like, they decided to cut the screen. I don't know. They're all fucking stupid. Obviously, they shouldn't have cut it in the first place, but you get what I'm saying. So when they entered, they saw Wojciech sleeping on the living room couch when Tex kicked him in the head, waking him up. So obviously, Wojciech is, like, startled and was like, what the fuck are you doing here? And Tex replied with, I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business. Tex orders the other girls to rally everybody up into the living room. And this began the absolutely gruesome night. And this, I believe, was over, like, hours worth of just, like, torture and torment. And it's fucking disgusting. So Wojciech was found in the yard with 51 stab wounds.
Holy crap.
Along with multiple defense wounds on his right hand. His left hand was actually still clutching the grass when they found him. Abigail Folger, his girlfriend, was also found in the yard. She was wearing a white nightgown that police thought was actually red. How many stab wounds she had? She was stabbed 28 times in her upper torso and had several lacerations on the left side of her face, with also like multiple defense wounds. So all of them pretty much have a shit ton of defense wounds. Like, they went out like with a fucking fight. Sharon was found inside the home, also with 16 stab wounds. But what was super weird is that she had a nylon rope tied around her neck. Jay was also found right next to her, and he also had the same rope tied around him. So it was tied around Sharon's neck, and then the other part of it was tied around Jay's neck. And then it was thrown over one of the beams on the ceiling. So this just shows you, like, that they were absolutely torturing these people. Yeah. Like, there's no telling what the fuck happened that night or what they both experienced. So Jay not only had the rope tied around his neck, but he also had multiple stab wounds as well, along with a large abrasion on the left side of his face. His left eye was, like, severely bruised and almost swollen shut. And I watched an interview with one of the police officers that showed up on the scene. I debated on leaving this part out just because it is really fucking gruesome, but I feel like it's not talked about enough just to show how absolutely horrible these people are. So yeah, she was 8 months pregnant. The baby didn't make it, but there was a giant cut on her stomach, as almost if they were going to remove the baby, and then stopped.
My God.
The bodies were found by the housekeeper, who Sharon actually told to stay the night. And she was like, no, like, it's fine. Like, I just want to go home, whatever. So she shows up and she finds the bodies and then runs to a neighbor's house to get help. And then in the guest house remained the friend that Stephen Parent, the 18-year-old, was seeing. I didn't write down his name. That's my fault. But they thought, like, he was one of the suspects because he was still alive. But he didn't hear anything, like, nothing at all. And he was later cleared, whatever. But I just can't imagine, like, you just saw your friends, like, 8 hours ago. Like, what the fuck? Like, and then you wake up to that, like, because he woke up, like, obviously hearing the maid scream and all this stuff, and, like, these people coming in, the police and all that stuff, and then comes out and sees this awful, horrific murder scene. So the members were later tried and convicted, and I think all of them died in prison, and I believe all of them were also on life sentences as well. I also didn't really look into that part. The house itself was actually owned by Rudolph Altobelli, and he was just renting it out to Sharon and her husband. What blows my fucking mind, exactly 3 weeks after the murder, he moves back in. I also read an article where he actually billed Sharon's parents for the damages on the house. Yeah, so piece of shit person. Yeah. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. He's an absolute piece
Horrible
of dog
person.
shit person. So not only did he move in 3 weeks later, but he stayed there for almost 20 years in that same house. And he, like, later on, like, people asked about, like, ghost encounters and all that stuff, whatever. And he was like, no, it's a lovely home. Like, and just, like, said, like, it was a dream to be there. No, I think you're just a piece of shit hungry or money hungry fucking person. Anyways, after 19 years, he sold it to John Prell. He was a real estate investor. And he sold it for $1.6 million in 1989, which is about $4 million today. And then it was sold again later on in 1992 to Trent Reznor. I don't know if he's a lead singer. I don't fucking know. He's kind of weird. It also didn't really look into him. But he was like one of the singers for 9 Inch Nails.
Okay.
He rented the house and set up a recording studio, which he named Pig. So,
wait.
Because of the night, or because on the night of the murders, they wrote the word pig in Sharon's blood on the front door. So, he knew that they wrote that on the door and was like, I'm in the same house Sharon Tate was murdered. So I'm just going to name my recording studio Pig after the same word was put on the front door in her own blood, whatever. Everybody's so shitty in this fucking story. I hate everybody. Later on, he said that he felt awful because he talked to Sharon's sister and was like, no, I felt like a piece of shit. Like, kind of felt like remorseful in a way, and like came out and said like, I'm so sorry for being a piece of shit, whatever. But then later on, he moves out to another place, a new recording studio, and he took the fucking front door with him. The same front door.
Why?
Because he's fucking weird. Obviously, the door had been washed, you know? But you can still see the remnants of the word pig on there. Mm-hmm. And they wrote the word because, like, it was said that Charles Manson was trying to start, like, a race war and all this shit. He also wrote the word, like, helter skelter in there, which, like, relates back to the Beatles. Blah, blah, blah. I wasn't going to get into that because I'm not talking about
It's a lot.
Yeah. This is already a lot. The house was later demolished in 1994, and a new house was built in 1996. And I think the producer for Full House was actually one of the people that either built the house there or like ended up later buying it or something like that. Just a little fun fact. But what's also kind of weird is that this isn't the place where the ghost decided to hang out. So I think it was Usher.
Yeah.
I think that's his name.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually lived in the house, like the new house that was built, and then this other person that I'm about to talk about in just a second talked to him and was like, hey, have you ever experienced things? He was like, yeah, like I hear things, like whatever. But like legally, everybody has to be very quiet about what goes on in that house.
NDA.
Yeah, but also because like it's supposed to like lower the property value and whatever the fuck. So anyways, I don't fucking know. If my house was haunted, I'd be telling everybody.
You want to come see?
Yeah, exactly.
George, he's in the closet.
George. So in 1999, David Oman bought a lot just 150 feet away from the home. Not really thinking about the murders. His dad literally called him one morning at like 8 a.m. and was like, get your ass over here. There's a lot. I write down how much it was, but it's fucking cheap. He's like, there's a lot here. We can build on it, whatever. So they go up there. He finds it, likes it, whatever. Built a home. Not thinking about the murders at all. So construction begins. And one of David's contractors was by himself finishing up his work on the 3rd floor of the home when he heard footsteps. So he goes to check it out. Nothing. Goes back to work. Hears it again. Checks. Nobody. He then feels on the back of his neck, almost as if it was like an ice cold rag, get laid on the back of his neck. So he's like, fuck this, grabs his shit, books it. He was gone for 6 weeks before returning to the home. Fuck. Was it 6 weeks or 6 months? I don't understand my handwriting right now. But yeah, it was either 6 weeks or 6 months. And he gave David some bullshit story and was like, I have a family emergency, gotta leave. And then when he came back, David was like, "What the fuck happened to you?" And he's like, "I had a ghost encounter. Like it
I had an
scared
experience.
it scared the shit out of me." So then, like after this incident, like David became very aware and would invite people over. Like he had different psychics, psychic,
mediums.
psychic mediums,
Doesn't sound right now.
psychic mediums. A bunch of mediums, spiritual people.
Just a medium.
Come over to the house, ghost hunters, all that stuff. So David himself had multiple experiences. Still does to this day. Like he had one when he was laying in bed and he looks up and Jay Sebring, the man that was murdered in the home, was just staring at him and then pointed to the driveway. Right? Uh-huh. So he doesn't realize it's Jay at the time. He's kind of just like, what the fuck? But starts to like look into the murders a lot more because he's like, okay, I clearly saw something. I need to educate myself. So he goes back and looks, and it's like what he saw was a younger version of Jay. And he's like, okay, why the fuck was he pointing? Starts to think about it. Another house was being built, or like some construction or something was going on. And it was loud as fuck. Like so loud that it was like shaking the house. And so he was like, I think Jay was just telling me, hey, go tell those people to shut the fuck up.
I'm trying to sleep, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Another experience was he had a guest over and she was staying in the guest's bedroom when she felt someone sitting on the edge of the bed. So she's like, ew, what the fuck? Looks up, doesn't see anybody, but sees the imprint of somebody sitting there. Can literally see the bed divot. I would shit myself. I would run out. I don't know what the fuck she did. I don't know if she left. Again, I was too stunned to speak, and it didn't even happen to me. The woman was too stunned to speak.
Oh my god.
So yeah, all these experiences are happening. He brings in a bunch of mediums, brings in different ghost hunting groups. Mm-hmm. He brings in one medium. I listened to an interview that he did, but didn't write down the fucking name of the medium.
Failure.
I know. But she's like a hot shot medium. Like
Teresa
Caputo.
Yeah.
No, but I really fucking wish she would go to this house.
I'm glad you knew who the fuck I was talking about.
The Long Island medium. There's one part of David's house that isn't finished. So him and his dad kind of got in like a disagreement about how they wanted to do this last section of the house. Uh-huh. His dad wanted it one way, he wanted it another.
It's not his dad's house.
Exactly. I think they bought the lot together though.
Wow.
I don't know. But out of spite, David was like, fuck it, no, I'm not gonna finish it. Funny. I get it. And it's like part of the basement, so like nobody's ever gonna see it. So to this day it's not finished. But it's like open. So like it's
open outside open or like
no, it's like dirt. Like they built on top of it. It was like a giant a giant pile of dirt. And like a tree stump in there and shit. So, one of the mediums reach out to David and they're like, hey, I want to come see your house. David's like, cool, that's fine. But like, I want you to see it as it is. Don't bring camera crews. Don't bring equipment of any type. Like, just bring yourself. Which makes me feel like it's so legit. Some of the shit that he says, I'm like, whatever. But anyways, so takes her out the house. She feels things. Yada, yada. Goes down to this other side. And she's like, you ain't got like a Native American here? And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah. So the story is that there was a Native American man on his horse on this hillside. Obviously, this was way before like
LA.
Yeah. The hill, like even like to this day, is like very treacherous to go up. And so like him and his horse were walking or whatever, and the horse lost footing. And they fell, tumbled, and hit a tree. Both dying. Mm. And with the did you hear that?
I didn't like it.
That was weird. So with the a lot of weird shit has been happening in my house since I started this story.
Yeah.
Not gonna talk about it. I'm not really gonna acknowledge it. Whatever. So yeah, so she's like, yeah, like this guy, like he died right here and his remains were just left with erosion and how the earth works and stuff. Like his body has kind of like traveled throughout.
Yeah.
But like this is where he died. And what he didn't tell the medium is that that tree stump was there. It's covered in dirt. So her story matched because it was like, oh, that's kind of weird. And then he was like, well, I don't know. Like, she could be bullshitting me, whatever. Brings in other mediums that don't have any relationship with this other woman. And they said the same exact thing. Okay, bring in Zach Baggins.
This is a dope ass name.
Have you never watched Ghost Adventures? Watch one episode for me.
I was supposed to watch something else for you and I never did.
I literally don't care what.
No. What was that movie?
I don't care what episode it is. Just watch one episode.
Okay.
I can't stand. I have to be careful because he likes to sue people. No, fuck it. I don't give a fuck. I can't stand Zach Baggins. Like, he's one of those people that are like, I can feel the ghost entering my body. And then he like acts like he's possessed like 24 fucking times. Like, it's a whole thing. So anyways, David is like, this is a ghost hunting group. I'm going to allow them into my home to whatever. Well, he confides in Zach about this story about the Native American. And Zach took the story and fucking sprinted. Dude ran a fucking marathon. Zach Baggins goes and said on the episode, this house was built on ancient Native American burial grounds. And so there's Native American spirits. So yeah, a bunch of weird shit that Zach Baggins came up with. It was actually really sad for David because that was one story he like confided in with Zach. And then he just blasted it all over the place. Like David held like a watch party. And then that came on and everyone was like, what the fuck? And David was like, that's a fucking lie. I don't know why he said that.
Yeah.
So then he brings on Ghost Hunters, TAPS. Have you ever watched that before? You would like it. So I think they're legit. Like, they try to debunk everything.
Oh.
I've been watching them since I was little. Like, I absolutely adore them. So they went to David's house. He invited them over and had a night or two, I can't remember, on their own. David actually was in his car, like outside the entire night with like his dogs and his cats and stuff. One of the people that they had on there brought a K2 reader, which is an electromagnetic field reader. It's this little device and it lights up. What it's supposed to do is be able to like read the magnetic field in a certain located area, because it's thought that like ghosts and spirits and stuff can like manipulate electricity. So yeah, anyways, they use this K2 meter and they're like, so they told the ghost, do 1 light for no, 2 for yes. So they took it to like different places of the house and then found like one good spot. And literally, like, again, I watched the episode. They're all just sitting on the floor and like just have this reader just out. And he's literally holding it like this. Like, you can tell like his fingers aren't messing with anything. Like, they're not doing anything weird. And they're like getting a lot of information. They're like, are you a male? Yes, no, whatever. One of the people were like, fuck it, I'm just going to ask. It was like, is your name Jay Sebring? And they're like, yeah. And then he said, is Sharon here with you? And it says yes. I believe it was him. It might have been another spirit, but I'm pretty sure it was Jay. They asked him if he was able to manipulate the temperature in the room, because one of the claims is that the temperatures will drop. So Jay's like, yeah, I can. So the average temperature in the house was 69 degrees. And they had one of those hand thermometer thingies, like the ones that just like shoot. Yeah. So they aimed it on one spot and was like, okay, so the spot is reading 64 degrees, but drop it down to 62.0, and does. They're all sitting, like, you could literally watch them. They're literally all just sitting in the room, just like staring at this one spot, and it's going down and down and down and down and down from 64 to 62. And then he brings it back up, back to 64. Isn't that fucking creepy? They also, like, in the episode, catch like a woman's voice that's like very fucking disturbing. Don't know if it was Sharon. It was never like told if it was or not. But you just have to watch the episode because the voices that they catch is fucking, like, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's some of the ghost stories. He keeps like a live stream on, I think. He has like this shelf where like a bunch of different like action figures are, and he literally keeps a recorder on it all the time. Because these action figures will just like, they'll ask it, the ghost or whatever, and just be like, hey, like, can you knock that over? A minute later, knocks over. this guy was literally just doing like kind of like a little docu-series on David himself and like some of the ghost experiences, but mainly just like David and the history of the house. And they're sitting there talking about the action figures. 2 minutes later, it falls. And David's like, look, and he's like picking shit up and he's like hitting the table as hard as he can. He's like, I can't explain it. And then it pans over and it shows how he has like a little camera recording the entire time because he's like, this is the most activity I get. He's like, it's pretty cool and it's interesting and nobody can explain it. And so like they show like the inside of the thing that the thing is on. Nope, it's a ghost. This shit's fucking crazy.
Oh my god.
So, with that being said, I'm going to tell a story.
Is it time for a graveyard confession?
It is time for a graveyard confession. My sister had some experiences when she was younger. After I forced her to write out her story, she finally did and emailed it to us and said that I could share it. So I'm just going to go straight into it. When I was younger, I had constant nightmares. So only very rarely did I remember every detail of one. But of the few I do recall, there are 3 that I would really like to forget. Although they may not seem like that bad on their own, the feeling of inescapable dread I felt both during the nightmares and the days that followed is still enough to give me goosebumps. I had the first one shortly after I turned 8. In the dream, I was walking through a forest towards a lake, and as I got closer to the water, I realized there were 2 men on a floating wooden dock in the center of the cove, and that the sound I had chalked up to the screeching sounds of insects was actually their screaming. What I call the camera angles of my dream started to shift, and I learned that the 2 men were actually my father and his father. Their floating dock was starting to fall apart, and they were surrounded by alligators. Or there was nothing I could do but scream, so that's what I did. And as the dock finally gave way, they were overtaken by the animals. I saw the image of a man standing on the shoreline with a grin on his face, watching intently until his lifeless eyes finally locked on mine. Of course, as you would expect in a story like this, that is when I woke up from falling off my bed, breaking my favorite snow globe, rest in peace, and bolted for my parents' room. I was distraught as my father wasn't home and I just lost him in my dream, but even more concerned that the mysterious man that I saw would find me. As I said earlier, I had frequent nightmares, but none as terrifying as that until about 2 years later. By then, we had been living in Italy for just as long, as my dad was stationed there pretty soon after my first dream, and then quickly deployed. In the dream, I was downtown Vicenza with my mom and sister. The town square was one I typically found safe and fun, and was the only few places off post that my mom felt comfortable enough to take us without my dad. I remember this being the place I really fell in love with architecture. If you aren't familiar with the older Italian architecture, a lot of the time there seems to be elaborate doors or staircases that lead to nowhere, just a grand door every once in a while. Well, in the second dream, my mom, my sister, and I were walking around the square, having a great time, showing each other all the cool details and we could find along the walls and ceilings when we stumbled upon a staircase. I had an odd feeling about it, but we continued on as normal. All of a sudden, as we were about to enter a shop, my sister's hand was yanked from mine, and she was being carried away from me insanely quickly by a stranger. I ran as fast as I could after her, but there was a crowd and I was going against the flow of walking traffic. She was screaming for me, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep up, and it seemed like no one else could hear us. We rounded the corner and I realized that she was being taken up the eerie staircase we had just seen moments ago. I was too late, and just as I reached the door at the top of the stairs, it slammed in my face. And all I could hear above my racing heart was her muffled screams as the, quote, dream camera angles switched again and focused on the face of another man. Not the face of the stranger who had taken her, but the man watching it all unfold. The man with the wild hair and the dead eyes who stood with the same maniacal grin he wore in the first dream. Just like before, I was jolted awake the second his dark eyes met mine. I ran into my mom's room that time, too, after making sure my sister was still sleeping in her bed. I remember being even more protective of her than before in the months that followed. This is where it gets kind of insane, so bear with me. As I'm sure you could guess by now, the third and final dream came another 2 years later. I was 12, and we now had a little brother. This time, I was staying at a family friend's home, still there in Italy, and we had fallen asleep watching Ghost Hunters. You know, as one does when you've seen almost all of them. From the moment the dream started, I was running. I never really stopped running the entire duration of the dream. This was already insane because the dream took place in Venice, and it can be incredibly hard to navigate in its maze-like streets if you aren't paying attention. The perspective of this dream was changing constantly, but it began with me seeing through the eyes of my mother as she ran through the busy, crowded streets clutching my baby brother to her chest. It wasn't immediately clear why she or we were running. I could just feel that it was life or death. As the dream progressed and I took the place of my mother, I was running as fast as I could while frantically searching for where to turn next. But, like a moment in the world's most captivating thriller film, each time I turned my head, I was met with the feral gaze of the man whose name remained unknown. No matter where I looked, he was standing there, perfectly still, grinning triumphantly. I made one last turn off the busy streets and discovered that I was finally face to face with the man I'd grown to fear above all others. And the once busy city was now completely quiet. But as he opened his mouth to finally speak his first words to me, I was ripped from my dream, sitting straight up on the couch I laid down to sleep on the night before. As I worked to calm myself, I looked up that Ghost Hunters was still on. The friend I was staying with had turned it back on when she woke up a few minutes before me, and she had already gone to grab her aunt to come check on me. Just as her aunt came into the living room, something horrific happened. The face of the crazed man was now flashing across the TV screen. I started sobbing almost immediately while my friend's aunt called my mom. When I was given the phone, I told my mom I finally knew the name of the mysterious man who had been haunting my dreams. Charles Manson. My mom came to get me pretty soon after that, and I finished the episode of Ghost Hunters while I waited for her. I had no idea how I knew his face well enough to dream of it since I was 8. Or, even more strangely, how I had seen that season of Ghost Hunters multiple times, yet never remembered seeing that episode. I didn't know anything about the Manson family or the murders at that point in my life, and it freaked my mother out so badly that my father called home from deployment to talk to me about it. If Reagan hasn't said it here yet, our family takes spiritual/paranormal experiences and dreams pretty seriously. I don't really remember the conversation we had about it. I just remember we were all very concerned. Over the next few days, I did a lot of digging on my mom's laptop about Charles Manson, the crimes he orchestrated, and the lives of his victims. Of course, at first, I thought he was probably haunting me from beyond the grave, but I learned pretty quickly that he was still alive and in prison, because this was the summer of 2010. The most fascinating part of all this, though, is something I discovered when reading about Sharon Tate. Sharon's father had also been in the military and stationed overseas. Yep, you guessed it, on the same military post my father was stationed. Sharon attended Vicenza High School, which shared a building with the elementary school we attended for years, until they built a new elementary and middle school on the housing base that opened in September of 2010. Sorry, it gives me chills every time. He never visited me in my dreams again. As a family, we joked that when he finally died, I would really be in for it. He would have free reign to torment me, but he never did. My luck, because I'm writing this out for the world, he'll decide the time has come. And no, we never found a reasonable explanation for where I would have seen him before the nightmares started. But given the first dream occurred just weeks before we moved to Vicenza and that I haven't had them since we left, I often wonder if Sharon was trying to tell me something. That may sound silly, but it's the only explanation that ever really made sense to me. So yes, I don't know what the dreams were supposed to teach or tell me, but I also kind of hope that I never find out.
Holy crap.
Isn't that fucking creepy?
Like, I'm speechless.
That shit's so weird to me.
And it's terrifying.
Absolutely. Because I remember, like, when she was having all these dreams and how they were, like, it fucked my sister up. Like, again, like what she said, like, for a couple days. And then I was talking to my mom about it the other day, and she said, like, she, like, vividly remembers when my sister called her that night. And, like, usually, like, in situations, like, my sister being, like, super scared or something like that, she's really easy to calm down. Like, to get her to think rationally.
Mm-hmm.
But even my mom was like, no, like, I seriously, I could not calm her down at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's Charles Manson and Sharon Tate and the weird fucking connection that we have with them.
Which is insane.
I asked my sister, I was like, should I mention that we were also stationed in Vicenza? And she was like, no, just wait till the end. I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, fuck, I shouldn't have told Bailey. I should have just waited.
It's okay. It was a really great story. Today was crazy.
That was a long one, but it was a fucking interesting one.
It was interesting. I hope to hear more different episodes.
So yeah, that was my very long but interesting story.
It was very good. Thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that I have to drive home by myself now and it's 11:15. But you know, we're gonna make it. We're gonna do good. Charles Manson isn't alive. He's not gonna get me.
We'll
be fine.
2017.
2017.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. It'll be fine. Alright, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow. We can't wait to see you for the next episode. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Stay safe in the graveyard.
Bye.
Adios. If baby was she drives home alone. Poor little girl.